please sit down. We're about to start and we have little time.
So funny, last year I was here by myself.
You were on your own? Oh my God, that must have been lonely.
It was what? It was so much emptier. It was like 20 people here.
They didn't know. They didn't know what they were facing.
Bueno, buenos días. Vamos a
Okay,
sentarnos, por
good
favor.
morning, and please sit down if you'd be so kind.
Buenos días. Vamos a
As I was saying,
presentar
good morning. We're
una
going to
de las
present
películas
one of
que
the
forman
films that
parte
form
este año
part
de la
this year
sección
of the
oficial del
official
festival.
section in
Como
this
sabéis,
festival.
se trata
As you
de
know, the film is
Ballad
called
of a
Ballad
Small
of a
Player,
Small
que
Player.
lleva el título Maldita Suerte.
Maldita
Es la
Suerte
nueva
in
película
Spanish
de
is the
Berger,
title. The
que
new
hemos
film by
visto
Edward
además
Berger.
estuvo en el
Last year, you know, he was in the film festival with Conclave, and it's a great pleasure to have him again this year. To present the film, we have significant part of the casting. I'm going to introduce you from the far end, and as you know, there's a lot of you can ask the questions, but I want to introduce you to present Ballad of a Small Player, Mike Goodridge, the producer of the film, Colin Farrell, the leading actor, Edward Berger, director and producer of the film, and Fala, Chen, the leading actress in the film. And let's start with the first question over here.
Hello, question here from Brazil, Rodrigo Fonseca, Correio da Manhã. What an electrifying film. Congratulations. I have two questions. Edward, watching the movie yesterday, a reference came to my mind was the killing of a Chinese bookie, the Cassavetes cult from the 70s. And in that movie, LA, the Crazy Horse Club was a character. I think that Macau is a character here, and I would like to hear you about that character. Mr. Colin Farrell, a question to you. Watching you yesterday, David Niven came to my mind all the time because David Niven uses to be the elegant rogue. What kind of roguery Lord Doyle have? Thank you very much.
Do you want to start, Colin?
Start with roguery?
Yeah.
That's a new word for me. I like it. Roguery. Yeah, Lord Doyle is just represents, I suppose, the lost soul in a very strange, otherworldly environment of incredibly high energy and incredibly high stakes. But he's just somebody who, like many of us on this planet, has lost his way. And when we meet him in the film, one of the things I loved about the script was that it didn't get into backstory. We meet the character in the present. He is on the precipice just before falling into the vacuum of his own kind of insignificance and the vacuum that can be the darkness of living without any meaning or sense of worth. His moral compass is non-existent. And yeah, he's like most addicts, he's not to be trusted. He lives kind of under the banner of lies and pretense in a very extraordinary and very extreme way. And through a certain set of misadventures and a certain set of encounters, particularly with Fala's character, he comes to kind of see the error of his ways. And that was very, very simply tracked for me in the script. And yeah, his roguery therein lies his roguery. Thanks, man.
I mean, I love that you compare Colin Farrell to David Niven. I don't know if you like that, but I think it's a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for your nice questions. I think Colin and I spoke a lot about the mustache. That's where maybe the David Niven also comes from. I think the mustache, and we really debated, does it come off halfway through the film? Does it, with its change? But Colin was very sort of convinced to portray the roguery with the mustache, to keep it on and do everything in the act. Anyway, Macau as a character, I think it so influenced the film, the city. In fact, it couldn't have been shot anywhere else. It's not an easy place to shoot, You immediately, of course, comes to mind, do we fake it somewhere? Do we go to, I don't know, Malaysia or Singapore or somewhere else to or Thailand or to find a gambling paradise? But it really needed to be Macau because it is the most, and thank you for calling our film electrifying, because Macau is the most electrifying place I've been to. You come and it's an attack on the senses. It's louder, it's more colorful, it's more boisterous, the fountains are higher, the lights are brighter than in any other city. And that needed to be part of the film. And, it basically, all the colors and music and everything is because of Macau. And because we thought, it's such, and, it's a world of abundance. In a world of abundance, which is Macau, in a world of abundance, there's a character who's so lost and really needs to find, in a way, his soul again, his spiritual center. And so that contrast was, perfectly found in Macau. I think you can get lost very much in a world that is so full of things, full of choices. Thank you very much.
Hay aquí delante.
Another question over here.
Hello, Karen Garrity
Hola.
from Ireland. And just want to say that there was this complexity to your character, but at the same time a whimsy that I felt maybe that was a bit of an Irishness. So I just wondered if you could share a little bit about your preparation. Obviously, there was a lot of physicality in terms of your creating that addiction and so forth. If you feel comfortable sharing kind of how you prepare for that, please.
Yeah. Hey, Karen. Good morning. Thanks for the question. It's always, I don't know, the simplest arithmetic in regards to acting seems to be just experience multiplied by imagination, played out in whatever the text you're given is. And so, I mean, it's pretty well chronicled now, my history with addiction and stuff, but I don't think you have to be an addict to play an addict, and et cetera, and onward and onward. I found I just found his constant kind of internal push and pull to be a really lovely place to start. He's somebody who really, as I said, doesn't believe in his own worth, is very self-centered, kind of to the point of being despicable and not really caring, and using the vulnerability of Fala's character to better his own immediate circumstance. At least he sees a potential in her. He doesn't see someone, I think he sees a little bit somebody struggling like him. He refers to it in a scene between the two of them, but more than anything, the greatest sorrow about him as a man and him as a character is that he sees her and her struggle as an opportunity to kind of claim advantage in a moment and get himself out of a hole, get himself out of a jam, a predicament. But his whole life is predicament. He's left everything he knows, everything he loves behind, and he's went to Macau to kind of, I don't know what. I mean, I still don't have answers to any of the scripts I've ever done. I don't have any concretized answers. I just have the experience that's played out in front of the camera with my fellow actors. As far as preparation goes, again, it's just imagination. You just spend a lot of time. I suppose I have some form of OCD that kind of, finds that it's given good life in regard to acting, because you get to obsess about the characters and their situations and maybe imagine their history, their own personal kind of origin story, even if it's not, as I said, articulated in this script. It's important to know from whence you came. And as far as the cards and all that stuff, I did spend some time with some gamblers in Macau, and gambling is one affliction that never really came near to me, I'm glad to say. I only ever damaged my body and my brain and not my bank account as much. But it was interesting. It was interesting to see. I mean, some of the high rollers in Macau, they put down some very, very serious money. I mean, we saw backstage one day, because it does all seem like a show, but in the background of one of the main casino floors, we went into one of the private rooms, and one of the casino floor managers said we had 2 players in last night, and he said the house did pretty well. And I said, what's pretty well for the house? And he said at the end of 4 hours of playing, we were up 24 million. And I was like, oh my God. So the kind of, but the opportunity is there, that kind of, you know, aspiration to have that moment's good fortune, to live the life you feel will give you the ultimate joy and the ultimate happiness, which, as we all kind of understand at this stage from reading and listening to each other and looking at the world, material things are fine and great. And I say that as someone who's been very fortunate to experience a lot of material, you know, things in my life. But if you're looking outside yourself, of course, for, you know, contentment, happiness, joy, connection, well, you can look outside yourself for connection, but it has to start from inside as well. But yeah, it's a fool's errand, you know, it's a cul-de-sac. And that's one of the things, the shortcoming of Doyle is that he's constantly looking outside himself for affirmation to his own worth, you know. Thanks for the question.
Hay aquí una pregunta.
Another question here.
Hi, good morning. First of all, congratulations for the film. Congratulations for both roles acting. You both were spectacular. I'm Mario from Mundo Cine. I'm going to ask the whole team. First of all, following what my colleagues said before about Macau, how is character itself in the film, how was the selection of the different locations that we can see in the movie, from the cast member, how was to be able to perform in those surroundings, because there is some shot, beautiful shot in the film when you are one with Macau, and how was the feeling to be surrounded with all of that? Thank you so much.
I'm going to let Fala answer the if you want to, how it was to be a part of Macau as an actor.
Thank you for your question. I think Edward always refers to our film as an opera, and I did get the sense that we're somehow acting on a huge operatic stage, like the Met Opera or something, that it feels very grand. The spaces are enormous, colors and everything. And Lizzie, our costume designer, is here today with us. She also helps us to feel that we're playing in an opera with the costumes and the colors and everything. And we're very lucky to have access to the casinos, obviously, but also to other quiet places, more calm spaces as well. And those spaces are not easy to find either. So it's every set was practical, wasn't really built. You can't build something that extravagant on a soundstage. And it definitely helps me as an actor to fully be in that space and to embody the character.
So the choice of locations, there's so many there, and it's basically whittling down, going in again and again and looking for the right place. And it eventually, you know, the cream of the crop that somehow fits together stays, you know. But in the beginning, just like, you know, maybe when you watch it, you're just attacked by the abundance of things. And then, I mean, we probably had 10 times as many locations to choose from. And then eventually you end up with the things that you feel fit together and represent what these two, you know, feel in their stomachs, ideally.
It's not easy to shoot there, by the way.
Tell us, Mike.
Because you're in a very, very regulated environment when you're shooting in Macau. The casinos are heavily regulated. You can't even move one of the tables without an alarm going off. And one of our biggest problems, for example, was when we started to create fake money. And you can imagine how thrilled the government was that we were creating a bunch of fake money to bring into the casinos. So I can't remember, I think our notes had to be much smaller than the real notes, and we had to be supervised whenever we were using that money. So there were many moments like that where we were kind of surprised by the level of scrutiny of what we were doing.
Hay aquí una pregunta.
There's a question here. Congratulations. Oops. Congratulations for the film. I would like to ask the director about the casting process, whether it was quite clear that you were going to choose Colin as the leading actor and the actors who are here today, for example, Fala. What was it like working with both of them?
Thank you very much. Well, Colin was very very clear to me. Actually, in the book and the first drafts of the script, and I think maybe even the script that I sent to you first, the character was still an Englishman. He wasn't basically a regular Englishman pretending to be an aristocrat. But then I had, we were sort of on the road together at the same time. Colin had Banshees, and I had a movie called All Quiet, and we met once in a while, sort of backstage at these type of events or in the sauna in a hotel, and we started talking about this script, and I suddenly thought that, an Irishman pretending to be an aristocratic Englishman is the ultimate irony, and I think that would be a great twist, a great reveal, and probably the English going, in the beginning watching this film going, why is Colin Farrell playing one of us? And then suddenly realizing, oh, he's not actually, and being relieved. So I thought that would be interesting, and Colin luckily thought too. So we just had conversations, and then I obviously was a big admirer of his work, and was very, very happy when he agreed to make the film. And so same with Fala. I'd seen Fala in many things, and I'd met her, and then we met for this film, and we just connected, and you did a beautiful sort of interpretation of the scene, and I felt she would get along with Colin and myself and Tilda and all the other actors in the film. And it's like building a family, building an ensemble where you think, okay, I think they could feed off each other, they could give something to each other, and then you pray that it works, because none of us really know each other, and then but it's sort of about the meeting, and because it's all, in the end, also because your question of how was it working with them was terrible, but no, it was not, it was wonderful, but it's a matter of trust, matter of trusting each other, and you have to get to know each other, and that takes a little bit of time. It probably takes the first few weeks of shooting to sort of slowly trust it and finding the role and finding the right interpretation of the role. And we just did that together. We just did that together, and I think eventually we sort of we just flew.
Hay una pregunta aquí.
There's a question here.
All of you. Jill from BAFTA and Critics' Choice. Colin, filming in Macau, what was your understanding of the seduction or the off-putting aspect of the champagne and gambling lifestyle? And also, all of those food scenes, were you thinking of like Mr. Creosote from Monty Python?
Yes, it's a waffeltin. I loved Macau. I had an extraordinary time there. It's, look, doing what we do, if you're lucky enough to do it, and joining these different troupes to bring these stories to life, becoming part of a crew, part of a cast, traveling the world, shooting in, I've shot everywhere from Svalbard, Archipelago, to New Orleans, to Montevideo, and this time was Macau, and then we did 8 weeks in Macau, I think 6 weeks of shooting, 2 weeks of prep, and then 2 weeks in Hong Kong. I'd never been to Hong Kong. I fell in love with Victoria Bay. But Macau is extraordinary, because as Fala was alluding to, it is, on the surface, you think of Macau, or certainly I did, and I thought of this gambling mecca of the East, and it's very much that, as Ed was saying, it's so extraordinarily loud and bright and filled with excitement. They literally dredged the sea floor between two former islands, one Taipa and Colowan, and they dredged the sea floor, and they made what is now the Strip, the gambling Strip. But on the other two sides, the islands that pre-existed, modern Macau is a gambling mecca. Those two islands are very, very old and filled with culture and beautiful churches and really small little coffee shops at the end of winding roads. And I used to go to Colowan at the weekends, which is the small fishing part of Macau, and I used to just sit there in a cafe that I found and get a bowl of noodles and a sardines and a coffee and sit with my script. I was in heaven. I loved it there. So I found it quite peaceful. We stayed on the strip in the middle of the gambling zone, but at the weekends I would get out of there. People were incredibly welcoming. Tough to counterfeit cash, which was a problem. But you get over that. And yeah, as far as the food goes, no, it was fine. That was fun to do that scene. Yeah, it was fun up until the third take, and then it got a bit old. But he was very gentle with me that day. He didn't do the amount of takes that he might usually explore. I think he was very kind of aware of the discomfort and the ever-extended belly that was appearing in the bottom of the frame.
No, I wanted some leftovers for me.
Yeah, but it was all part of the gig. Thank you, love. Thanks for the question.
Aquí hay una pregunta.
Another question, my colleague in the back first.
Hello, Patricia Batjen, Kultur. I think, Mr. Berger, this is the first time you have title design, if I recall. And how does this title design in the beginning and the end and the music by Volker Bertelmann relate to the ghost story? And maybe something about the dance at the end that no one should miss?
Yes, the title design is, again, it's Macau. It's Macau that inspires you to go over, it's like to do an opera and to represent what the film should feel like, just colorful and full of life and full of expression and, embracing Western and Chinese culture and mixing it. And then also, if you stay for the end of the credits, it's kind of like Colin's character also. I mean, they start fairly regulated and they end up in a circle and completely, just like the character unravels, the credits start unraveling. So it just really came from this. It's mostly inspired. I always think this should be inspired to make you feel what Colin's character feels or what Fala characters feel. Ideally, everything should be in the movie, should help you feel that. And in this case, it was also the colors or the title design. And the music is, I think we searched for a long time for the right tone in the film. We wanted it to be as operatic as possible, but also as tender as possible, and to as fragile as possible, and to have it unravel as Colin's character unravels, have the music unravel, and start to be distorted and start to be disjointed, and to then ultimately find peace in the final shot. And Volker and I, we've been working together for a long time, and I think the biggest danger of working together for a long time that you repeat yourself, that it becomes sort of a recognizable, well, this is how it works, and I'm absolutely bored by that. And so I love working with, because we always challenge each other and feel like, how do we make something different? And how do we, in this case, incorporate the ghost story into the music? And that's a long sort of process of searching, trial and error, and throwing things out and that don't work. And ultimately, when you chafe everything away, all the right songs remain in the film. And I think there was one more part to your question.
Dance.
The dance, yes, of course. The dance was, it's just really, I think it's the ultimate, I really enjoy leaving the audience with something positive after this ride. I really enjoy watching Colin transform and having Lord Doyle's character fall apart, but ultimately, to my interpretation, finding some sort of peace in the end, the beginning of a new life, throwing away something, the watch, and throwing away his old life and beginning a new one, and thanks to whatever their connection was, two lost souls in the universe finding each other and giving each other redemption. And the dance sort of needed to be, an explosion of that, an explosion of joy for a new part of life, for a new part of Colin's life. I think that's why it found its way into the film.
Hay una pregunta aquí atrás.
Another question in the back. All up.
Congratulations on the film. I was just wondering, watching the movie yesterday, about the influence of maybe some movies that take place into casinos. I don't know, watching the movie, I was thinking about Casino Royale, maybe because it's the most famous one that comes to my mind from recent years, but what kind of films influenced even the way you shot the scenes in the casinos, playing with the cards? And even for Colin, if that was something, if you watched something that influenced the way you're going to portray your character. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I think the influence is mostly, God, I forgot already, but I think it's mostly Asian cinema, I would say. Johnny To's films, Hu Xiaoshen's films, Wong Kar-wai's films. I think I studied those a lot just because they know the environment and I wanted to get it, I wanted to learn from them. I think in terms of gambling, as far as I remember, in Casino Royale, the gambling doesn't even take that much space up in the film. It's mostly about wonderful car chases and drinking martinis. So, of course I watch Casino and Casino Royale and all these films. I have them all at home and I keep rewatching them when I make a film like this. And somehow it's, like Colin said earlier, it's experience and collecting ideas left and right. And they might come from something completely unexpected, from David Niven's mustache, so you just collect a whole, as you make a film and as you grow older or have this experience or lose your parents or something, all that finds its way into your films, and part of that is gambling films. But I wouldn't say that I don't really think, to me it could be, I don't really think of it as a gambling movie. This might be weird. It's more of I find it much more important, that's the gift wrapping, that's the thing. I think what it's much more about is the really finding an inner peace or finding a truth in your life or finding your way in a world that is so overcrowded with everything. That to me, that element is much more important, and to get the characters right. It's and to work with these wonderful people and shaving out that story rather than getting the gambling scenes right is a little bit more technical. I think it's like the action in an action movie.
Yeah, same what he said.
And they're actually very painful to shoot. Huh?
Which all the scenes,
also
there's a lot of intricate stuff,
yeah.
And sometimes as an actor I find, or even more importantly as an audience member, I find that too many inserts can be kind of didactic and it can be leading my attention somewhere, or that I don't feel my attention needs to go towards, or I'm already getting enough information if you stay with the actors, and it can take me out of a scene too many. But with Edward, the way that he covered a lot of the gambling stuff, and indeed the first 5 minutes of Conclave, I found that there was a kind of a complete cinematic language to his use of inserts and his use of focusing attention, however briefly, on certain details and cutting from details to details. It was actually very kind of apropos to the story, and it was an incredible additive to the story. And I knew that, I felt that in doing these scenes at the table. We spent a lot of time at various baccarat tables and various casino floors during the making of this film, and I can't say that it didn't get tedious in certain moments, but you brush that tedium aside, of course, very quickly, because you understand that it's not always about you being excited in the moment when you're in work. You're doing something that is yet to be fully realized, and on the last day of a film shoot or shooting a television show or whatever it may be, on the last day the film doesn't exist. there is something that constitutes the potential for a film to exist, but the film doesn't exist. Just a bunch of images, a bunch of movements, a bunch of words, a bunch of experiences changed in front of a camera lens between people, but a film doesn't exist. And so I love Edward so much as a filmmaker and a storyteller, and I think he's extraordinary, that I just trusted completely in, because we were getting into some details, and some of the shots that were under the card, and he also has an extraordinary team of people, one of which is with us today, our costume designer, Lissy Crystal, but some of the camera operators as well, Danny Bishop, Phil Hardy, who was the focus puller. Edward has worked with these people before, so there was an incredible, even if I was finding the details and the capturing of them a little bit tedious sometimes, there was an incredible creative language that was going on between Edward and his co-collaborators. So it was still a joy to be around, yeah. Thanks, man.
And it's really interesting to see when you shoot the card, and it is absolutely tedious. You know, it takes 45 minutes to get the camera there, and then all Colin has to do is basically that, you know, lift the card. But then it was wonderful to see. He always like put a little shiver of his. He started acting with the hand.
Yes, hammy, handy.
Hay una pregunta aquí atrás.
A question back here.
Questions. And first, on the directing part, there were mention of colors, and I noticed certain influence on the directing, having seen Conclave, of the importance of colors. And Hong Kong is beautifully shot. And they asked you about Casino Royale, but I wanted to ask you about the influences, if you have any Asian influences, for example, Wong Kar-wai, at the time of shooting Hong Kong. And for the actors, I have a question. If you came across with your characters, what would you say to them?
I said earlier, I think the biggest influence on the film visually, but just as it has to do also with the colors of the place and the architecture and the people, were Wong Kar-wai, Johnny To, and Hu Xiaoshen. I think they found the biggest influence. Fala, what would you say to your character?
I would say she has no regrets, and I would ask her if she ever has regrets, because it seems like to me on the page, I'm still, to this day, after watching the film, like Colin said, the film doesn't really exist. The character's not complete until it's edited and everything is done, and I watch it and I have questions for her again. Does she have regrets? I would ask her that.
God, I don't know what I'd say to my character. I'd probably avoid my character. I'd probably see him enter the room and just turn around and I'd bolt and get out of there. Yeah, I wouldn't trust him. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know. At the end, I'd ask him, was it worth it? I suppose. At the end, depends on what stage of the character of the film I was meeting him at, I suppose. At the start, I'd ask him another round, Mr. Doyle, and at the end, I'd ask him, was it worth it?
Hay una pregunta aquí.
Hi, good morning. Hi, good morning. Hi, Mr. Berger. How you? It's enormous the way you risk everything so much in every film. Colin Farrell, this story with this supposed loser, which is a winning horse for the actor, perhaps. But is it luck in life? Do you have to know how to see luck in order to be lucky?
Thanks for the question. Do you have to be able to see luck in order to be lucky? Oh boy, good one. I mean, we all, of course, have choices. You know, some people would argue that there's no fundamental choice, that by the time you realize as a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old that there's a thing called choice, it's already predestined to a certain degree what choices you will make in any given environment because you've already been shaped by an environment that you don't understand the power of, but that will live within you forever. So, but let's say there is such a thing as free choice, and we all get to make a certain amount of choices. we never can really choose how life confronts us. We can choose, of course, how we respond to that confrontation. So with that in mind, I have no idea what the answer to your question is. I just wanted to say words. But honestly, also, you know, you just meet life where it confronts you and where it meets you, and you do the best you can. And somebody, you know, somebody who lives in a 30,000 square foot mansion in Bel Air could go to the dog track someday and could put $20 on a dog race and lose and say, Jesus, I'm really unlucky. So it's all very subjective, the idea of luck. You know, it's all very, very subjective. But I think you just meet life where life confronts you and where you find it at the road moment to moment, and you do the best you can, and you try to serve your true self and the people that you love in your community, and that's the best any of us can do. And that's certainly not what Doyle is doing in this film at all. I mean, he's serving himself, but what aspect of himself? He's serving the kind of lowest ethical, moral aspect of his internal life that a person could have. So that's not really serving, you know, the deepest, the purest part of himself. Thank you.
Vamos a hacer una última, por favor.
Let's ask a last question, because they have to, in Spanish. Please put your headphone. Congratulations for the film. And as you said, it's a film about gambling, but it's also quite spiritual, gambling addiction, and it talks about ghosts and spirits. And I'd like to know how you treated the director in this case, Mr. Edward Berger, for example, the spiritual side, and the actors. I'd like to ask you whether you believe in ghosts and how important is that spiritual side of thing as for both of you as actors in the film?
Well, I mean, it is really a film about a spiritual awakening. It starts with a man who just feels probably utter emptiness in the beginning because of his utter loss of direction and loss of identity. You know, he's even changed his name, and he's even thrown away, hiding his Irishness. You know, he's running away from everything. And in the end, it's about a spiritual awakening, and it really affected me deeply. And I think the film changed me. You know, and I learned a lot about it. I also learned a lot from being in Macau and from understanding how the culture in China embraces ghost stories and embraces I mean, Fala, you tell maybe me in a second again, I mean, I had so many conversations about Naraka with people about basically heaven or hell, the 70, how many stages? 17 stages or 13? 18 stages of hell, you know, that you go through. So, and that really needed, and I have, you know, a very hard time believing in ghosts. But in China, you don't. You know, they're part of life. And I think that sort of to jump over that hurdle and say, all right, and the wonderful thing about movie making, it doesn't have to be real. We can say anything, you know. We can just make things up and say this is the reality. And in that reality, as well as in China's reality, or you know, in our European reality, it's opposite. But we can choose the reality that we want to live in, and then put all our confidence, all our faith into that reality. And in this movie, you know, ghosts exist, just like they believe they exist in Chinese culture, and so they do exist because people believe in them, and so they exist. So that's what we put in the film, and it was very, very educational for me. It really, I think, it really, you know, it's a broadening of the horizon of understanding how other cultures, you know, have different beliefs, and how they're, anyway, that's it.
Thank you for that question. My mother used to tell me, if you've never done something wrong, then you don't need to be afraid of the ghost. There's that certain moral compass I think we all hold ourselves to. despite all religions, I think, you know, Christianity and a lot of religions have this concept of heaven and hell, you know, how you do in your current life. But in our film, there are a lot of references to actually different types of religion in the Chinese background, whether that's Taoism or Buddhism. And I also learned a tongue because I'm not a naturally very religious person. But yeah, the idea of spirituality comes to mind, but for our character, the morality, how you conduct, how you make choices in this life. But I believe at some moment, when I'm in the room with Colin, when we're playing, I feel like these two people, the way that they connected immediately, there's something beyond this current life, this current body. Maybe they've known each other in the past lives. There's that connection. So there's all these very fluid things happening in our film, which I think Edward encompasses so beautifully, that I think at the end of the day comes down to, especially Colin's character, Doyle, what choices he makes morally that places, yeah, whether it's in this life or places him in his next life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's not 18 stages of hell in Ireland. There's just one. There's just one.
One big one.
And the bad news is you're all going there. We're all going there. No, but I do believe in, I think the human mind is extraordinary, an organ as it is, as extraordinary as supercomputer as it is. I still think it's more limited than it is more able to access deep and kind of unknowing truths about the nature of life here, life elsewhere. So I believe in my ability to have an experience and to talk to you all and to hear you all and to have an amazing time with these three people and the crew members on this film and what that feels like, and it's filtered through my life and all that stuff. But I also believe that there is so many things that I can't see and I can't prove and that none of us can, that exist, and the exchange of energies, and whether that's some residual energy after the physical life expires or not, possibly. So I certainly would not disbelieve in the presence of ghosts. And I think it was something that was, charmed is way too shallow a word, but it was something that really deeply moved Riley/Doyle in this film, was the profound presence of faith in people's lives, and the scene where Dao Ming and Doyle have kind of an argument the second time they meet, and she takes him to a temple. Just that scene alone, and seeing the monk dance in front of the flames back and forth, there's something so beautiful and so symbolic and so reverential about the monk's movements and about his dedication to belief, which is essentially ineffable, faith ineffable. But there's something so beautiful. It's kind of like it's something for, I don't think he even realizes, but for it's kind of, if he's fallen off the cliff's edge or is about to, it gives him a chance to hold on to the cliff for a little bit longer, and thereby maybe be able to drag himself up by the end of the story. But yeah, the spirit world is something that saves him a lot more than any of his physical experiences in the film. Thank you.
Okay, this is the end of the press conference of The Ballad of a Small Player. Thank you.